At 10:15 a.m. on a Thursday, 73-year-old Sergeant Major William Bill Carter walked into the same Midway Federal Bank branch he had visited for over 2 decades. In his hand was a U.S. Treasury disability check, his lifeline for rent and groceries, earned after decades of military service. He leaned gently on his cane, his gait slowed by a leg wounded in Vietnam, but his pride remained firmly intact. Bill approached the counter, expecting nothing more than a routine deposit. Instead, what he received was a humiliating blow. Behind the glass sat Brenda, a newly trained teller no older than 20, whose name tag looked like it had been printed that morning. She barely glanced at Bill before scanning the check. A sharp beep echoed, and her brow furrowed. "I'm sorry, sir," she said flatly. "This check has been flagged by our system. It could be counterfeit. We can't cash or deposit it until it's cleared by the fraud department." Bill stared in disbelief. "That's a federal Treasury check." "It's my VA disability payment," he explained, his voice calm but firm. Brenda shrugged. "The system says no." When the branch manager, Mr. Lawrence, joined, he echoed the same excuse. "New system upgrades. Heightened fraud alerts." No one offered a solution. No one looked at the watermark or called Treasury verification. Bill retrieved his check and ID, stunned that his service and his honor were being questioned. He left the bank not just without his money, but with his dignity shaken, wondering how he'd pay rent tomorrow. For the first time in years, a soldier who had survived war now felt defeated at home. Brenda's eyes narrowed as she slid the Treasury check back across the counter. "I'm sorry, sir, but the system flagged this check for irregularities. I can't deposit it until it clears through our fraud department. It might be counterfeit," she said, her voice clipped and robotic. Bill Carter blinked in disbelief. "Counterfeit? That's a U.S. Treasury check. It's my VA disability payment. I've deposited one just like this every month for years." Brenda crossed her arms, unmoved. "Our policy requires a 10-business-day hold when a check is flagged. That's just how it works." Bill felt his jaw tighten. The young woman couldn't have been older than his granddaughter. "Miss, I've been banking here for over 2 decades. I've served this country for 35 years. My rent is due tomorrow. I need this check to clear today." "I understand, sir," Brenda said, clearly not understanding at all. "But the system doesn't make exceptions." Bill's fingers trembled slightly as he took back the check. His pride was fraying at the edges, but he tried again. "Just look at the watermark, the seal. It's all legitimate. There's nothing unusual about this check." Brenda glanced at it again, then shook her head. "I've already told you. We're following bank protocol. There's nothing I can do." "Are you seriously accusing me of trying to pass a fake Treasury check?" Bill asked, his voice calm but with an unmistakable steel edge that echoed from his old command days. Brenda seemed startled for a moment, but quickly recovered. "I didn't say that, sir. I'm saying it's flagged by the system, and that's how we have to treat it." Just then, the branch manager, Mr. Henderson, wandered over. He was a tall, slightly balding man, with the kind of forced smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Everything okay here, Brenda?" he asked, glancing at Bill like he was a problem to be dealt with. "She's refusing to deposit my check," Bill said, holding it up. "A U.S. Treasury-issued disability payment. Claims it might be counterfeit." Henderson gave a sympathetic nod that felt more like a dismissal. "Yes, sir, these things happen. The new fraud detection software is very sensitive. It's flagged a few Treasury checks before, just a precaution." "I don't need a precaution. I need access to my money," Bill replied. "I'm afraid there's nothing we can do until the system clears the hold," Henderson said. Perhaps you have other funds you can use in the meantime? The suggestion stung, as if Bill hadn't spent his life budgeting carefully on his fixed income. He stared at Henderson for a long second, then gave a quiet nod, the kind a soldier gives when he knows he's just been dismissed by someone who doesn't understand the stakes. He gathered his things without another word and stepped outside, each step of his cane tapping against the tile like a metronome of frustration. He sat down heavily on the bench just outside the bank, clutching the check like it was the last thread of his dignity. This wasn't the first time he'd dealt with bureaucracy, but it was the first time he'd felt truly insulted, accused even, to be treated like a suspect rather than a customer, like a liar instead of a man who had worn the uniform and bled for his country. Bill stared off into the distance, torn between calling the VA, where he knew he'd get nothing but voicemail trees and hold music, or doing something more direct. Then, out of nowhere, he remembered. Years ago, during a complex operation involving financial fraud in Southeast Asia, Bill had worked with a no-nonsense federal investigator named Marcus Thorne, a man who didn't play games. After the mission wrapped, Thorne had handed him a card. "If you ever hit a brick wall involving federal checks," he'd said, "call me directly. Some of these systems don't know who they're dealing with." Bill had never used that card. Until now. With a shaky breath and steady hands, he pulled his old flip phone from his pocket and dialed the number. It rang once, then twice. "This is Thorne," came the voice, older, maybe, but still firm. "Marcus, this is Bill Carter. You remember Operation Timberline?" There was a pause. "Sergeant Major Carter, what the hell's going on?" Bill didn't mince words. "Bank just flagged my VA disability check as counterfeit. Refused to deposit it. Rent's due tomorrow." "Where are you?" "Still sitting outside the branch." "Don't move. I'm escalating this now." Bill hung up and sat silently, watching the world go by, unsure what would happen next. But for the first time that day, feeling like someone had finally heard him. William Bill Carter sat quietly on the bench outside the Mid-County Bank branch, the Treasury check still trembling slightly in his aging hand. His cane rested against his knee, a symbol of the injury he'd carried since the jungles of Vietnam, now aggravated not by war, but by bureaucracy. The disbelief in Brenda's eyes still echoed in his mind. It wasn't just the rejection of his check. It was the implication that he might be trying to cheat the very system he'd spent a lifetime defending. The word counterfeit had never sounded so personal. For a moment, Bill felt completely alone, as if the very nation he'd served no longer recognized him. But then, through the fog of frustration, a memory flickered to life. Years ago, while working a joint task force operation with federal financial agencies, Bill had earned the respect of a high-level agent from the Treasury Department, someone who understood integrity, systems, and service. That man was Marcus Thorne, now a senior official in the office of the Inspector General. Back then, Thorne had handed Bill a card and said, "If the system ever turns on you without reason, call me." Bill had never imagined using that number, but today felt like the moment it was meant for. He pulled the worn card from the depths of his wallet, the print faded, but still legible. With trembling fingers, he dialed the number. It rang once, twice. "Thorne," came the crisp voice, older but still firm. "Marcus, it's Bill Carter. We worked together on Operation Sentinel in '92. I've run into a problem." Thorne didn't miss a beat. Bill Carter, of course. What's going on? Bill kept it brief, professional. Tried to deposit my VA disability check. Flagged as potential fraud. Teller refused to verify it. Said I'd have to wait 10 business days. Rent's due tomorrow. There was a pause. Not of confusion, of calculation. Are you still at the branch? Thorne asked, his voice tightening. Right outside. Good. Don't go anywhere. A Treasury OIG response team is on the way. I'm escalating this myself. Bill blinked. That's really necessary? It is, Thorne said, his voice now steel. Flagging a legitimate Treasury check without due diligence is not just offensive. It may be a violation of federal banking law. Sit tight. You'll be hearing from us shortly. 7 minutes later, the silence inside the Mid-County Bank shattered. 2 unmarked black sedans pulled up directly in front, federal license plates flashing in the sunlight. 3 individuals exited briskly, 2 men and 1 woman, all in dark, impeccably tailored suits. They moved not like bureaucrats, but like field agents, calm, deliberate, and commanding. The lead, Agent Marissa Miller, flashed her Treasury badge at the startled security guard and headed straight for the glass-walled office of Mr. Henderson, the branch manager. Without waiting for invitation, she entered. Mr. Henderson, she began, placing her credentials firmly on the desk. I'm Special Agent Miller, U.S. Treasury, Office of the Inspector General. We're here to conduct an immediate inquiry into this branch's refusal to process a federally issued disability check. Henderson sputtered, visibly thrown off. A check? You mean, yes, the check presented by Sergeant Major William Carter, flagged without proper verification and denied deposit in direct conflict with Treasury verification protocols. Behind her, Agent Chen and Agent Davies moved toward the teller line. Ms. Brenda, Agent Davies said calmly but firmly. Please step away from your terminal. We need full access to your system logs and all correspondence related to this incident. Brenda's eyes widened. The color drained from her face. She backed away without a word. Meanwhile, Agent Miller continued in Henderson's office, laying out a printed copy of Treasury check verification procedures. Flagging by a system is a prompt, not a verdict, she stated. You failed to escalate. You failed to verify through available channels. And you treated a veteran relying on disability funds as a suspect, not a citizen. That is not just a lapse in judgment. It is a breach of federal expectations. Outside, Bill Carter watched in quiet disbelief as the federal agents took over the bank. Then a 4th man approached from the cars. Bill, the man said, smiling slightly. It's good to see you. Marcus Thorne, Bill said, shaking his hand. Didn't expect all this. Sometimes the system needs reminding, Thorne said, sitting beside him. You served with honor. You should be treated with it. Inside, the check was quickly verified and deposited. But more importantly, justice had arrived, not with shouting or protest, but with precision and authority. Bill's name was cleared, his dignity restored. Inside the Mid-City National Bank, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Just moments after William "Bill" Carter had placed the call to his old ally from the Treasury Department, the sterile hum of business as usual was shattered. 2 unmarked black sedans with U.S. government plates pulled up directly in front of the bank, ignoring the designated customer parking signs. A trio of sharply dressed individuals stepped out. 2 men and a woman, their posture rigid with purpose, eyes scanning, every move efficient and unhurried. Agent Lisa Miller, leading the group, displayed her federal credentials to the startled security guard and marched straight toward the glass-walled office, of branch manager Mr. Henderson. The other two agents, Davies and Chen, followed tightly behind, drawing hushed murmurs from customers and staff alike. Brenda, the young teller who had flagged Bill's check, froze at her station as the agents bypassed the usual protocols. Henderson barely had time to rise from his desk before Miller placed a warrant in front of him. "Mr. Henderson," she began with polite firmness, "we're from the U.S. Treasury Office of the Inspector General. We are here to conduct an immediate compliance review regarding this branch's refusal to process a legitimate U.S. Treasury disability check presented by Mr. William Carter approximately 10 minutes ago." Henderson blinked, his mouth opening and closing in disbelief. "A warrant? For a check?" "For mishandling a federally issued instrument," Miller corrected, "and for potential violation of federal regulations regarding the timely access to government disability funds." As Agent Davies moved toward Brenda's workstation, she stepped back in alarm, her earlier smug confidence evaporating. "Step away from your terminal, ma'am," Davies said calmly but firmly. "We'll need access to all transaction logs and system flags associated with Mr. Carter's check." Brenda nodded mutely and backed away. The other tellers stared, paralyzed by the gravity of what was unfolding. The lobby had fallen into a tense silence. This wasn't just a customer complaint. This was a federal audit in real time. Out on the sidewalk, Bill Carter watched it all from the bench where he had been told to remain. A fourth figure approached him from the sedans, moving with quiet authority. It was Marcus Thorne, the very man he had called. No longer the junior agent Bill had known decades earlier, Thorne now carried the unmistakable gravity of a senior federal official. "Sergeant Major Carter," Thorne said, with a respectful nod and a hint of a grin. "Sometimes a little face-to-face clarification is necessary." Bill stood, startled but grateful. "You didn't have to come all the way down here yourself, Marcus." "I think I did," Thorne replied. "My agents are handling the technical part, but it's important they understand exactly who they mistreated." Back inside, Agent Miller was walking Mr. Henderson and Brenda through the bank's own policies and Treasury verification protocols. She pointed to the watermark and security features on the check Bill had submitted. "Your system flagged this for additional scrutiny, not for automatic denial," she said, her voice edged with controlled disappointment. "A manual verification with your central office, or even a quick call to the Treasury's verification line, would have confirmed this check's validity in minutes. Instead, you treated a decorated veteran like a criminal." Henderson looked pale. Brenda, now seated in a side office, had tears streaming down her face. "This isn't just bad service," Miller continued. "It's a failure of duty, and one that will have repercussions." Moments later, under the direct supervision of Agent Davies, Bill's check was finally deposited. The funds were confirmed and available. Henderson returned to the lobby, contrite and flustered. "Mr. Carter," he said, voice low and uneven, "on behalf of Mid-City National, I apologize. This shouldn't have happened." Bill looked him square in the eye. "No, it shouldn't have." As Thorne rejoined his team, he turned to Bill with a warm smile. "Let's get you lunch. We've got a lot of years to catch up on." And with that, the two old colleagues walked out, leaving behind a stunned bank, a humbled staff, and a very clear message. Some veterans don't just fight wars. They fight for dignity. And when the system fails, honor doesn't stay quiet. The day ended not with anger, but with quiet dignity. William Bill Carter didn't want applause or headlines. He only wanted to be treated with the respect he had spent a lifetime earning. Through war, through pain, through years of faithful service to the country he still loved. Thanks to the intervention of Marcus Thorne and the swift action of federal agents, justice wasn't delayed. His check was deposited, the bank held accountable, and more importantly, a clear message was delivered. Veterans are not to be treated as suspects. They are to be honored as protectors. Later that afternoon, over coffee at a small diner just down the street, Bill and Marcus shared old stories, their laughter mixing with the clink of mugs and the hum of a jukebox. The pain of humiliation faded, replaced by the comfort of knowing that someone still stood watch. That honor, when defended, still had power. And here's the truth we should all carry forward. Bureaucracies may forget, but people, especially those who served, should never be overlooked. If you believe every veteran deserves not only their benefits but their dignity, let your voice be heard. Comment below with "Respect our veterans," share this story, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep honoring the men and women who gave so much. Because in a world full of systems, it's human decency that keeps us truly connected. And sometimes, that's what makes all the difference.